I haven't done these voiceover videos in a while, or any videos for that matter, but I wanted to make this video to celebrate my fic Small Town Boy getting 400 kudos on AO3, it now has over 470, and also temporarily ranking #1 in the bio tag on Wattpad for a few days. For those of you who don't know who I am, I don't know how to dance, and my channel used to be for edits, speed paints, and OC content, but recently, my Stranger Things videos blew up my channel, which were predictions for Byler the finale after Volume 2 of Season 5. I'm also known for writing Byler fanfiction, so specifically the finale rewrite fic Small Town Boy, which, like I mentioned earlier, quickly became popular and even slightly famous. I'm currently writing a sequel called Eyes Without a Face, and working on 2 separate one-shots, but right now, the main focus of this video is Small Town Boy, how it came to be, and how it saved my writing after the months it was at its lowest. But in order to do that, we have to go back to the beginning. Before I continue with this video, I want to thank you all so much for your support and for following me on the journey that was Small Town Boy. You all helped my motivation greatly, and I'll explain why very soon. Just to clarify, this will probably have some holes because this is my first time talking about my life, and I might omit a bit too much for personal reasons. I'm trying to find a balance between what matters in my story and what I can remove without any confusion. And one final thing. I wrote most of the script before I got my retainer, so sorry if my voice sounds weird or I have some sort of lisp or whistling on the S. I'm still trying to get used to talking with this thing on. Okay, for real now, I'm starting the video. I was a very creative little kid, so creative that I don't even remember when I started writing. It came so easily to me, mainly because I was always reading and drawing and getting inspired and writing bad knockoffs of whatever book I was obsessed with. I certainly was no Shakespeare, but I didn't have to be. Writing became one of my main hobbies in 5th grade, and I basically used every form of writing known to man. I wrote books, plays, speeches, comics, and even fictional newspapers that I'd give my neighbors. I didn't worry about if my writing was good or not because I was having too much fun to care. I started prioritizing writing above my other interests in 7th grade, and when I committed to my first real project after many failed book ideas, I knew I wanted this to be my career. I spent a whole year drafting my novel, but when I started the first official draft in 8th grade, there was a problem. No one wanted to read it. Some people did want to read it, of course, just not enough, at least to me. At the time, I was deeply inspired by the Percy Jackson series and the works of Stephen King, as well as the Hunger Games and the Maze Runner. I fell in love with those books, and I saw how large their fan bases were, and I wanted it to happen with my own work. I knew it would take time, but I was very impatient. I thought that the only way I'd get readers was if my writing was perfect. So I spent all of 8th grade running my draft through proofreading websites, stressing over sentence length and grammar before I was even finished with my first draft, which I heavily advise against. First drafts aren't supposed to be perfect, no matter how much you want them to be. I used to think that was an exaggeration, but it's entirely true. First drafts are when you're still getting your footing and finding your style, especially when it's your first writing project and you're fully committed to. No matter how emotionally attached you are to a story, it's going to be chunky and full of errors at first, no matter what you do. If anything, trying to make the plot perfect before I was even finished with the draft just caused many more plot holes that only added to my struggle. I was deeply insecure about my writing, and by the time I started sophomore year, and I do say sophomore because freshman year was a hot mess and I barely ended up writing at all, writing my novel felt more like a chore than anything. I barely had any readers, and I was craving a second opinion, anyone who would listen to my writing struggles and give me advice. In a moment of weakness, I started using ChatGPT for writing advice and plot feedback. If there's one piece of advice I can give in this video that will just stick with you, it's this one. AI does not understand your writing in the way you do. I wouldn't even advise to use it as a last resort because that's what I did, and it destroyed my writing and motivation. I became dependent on it very quickly. And in a matter of weeks, I was fully incapable of creating my own opinion on my work. It made my writing dull and repetitive, and even now, there's still some traces of it in my current work. A month before I finished my book, Stranger Things Season 5, Volume 1 came out. I had been in the fandom and shipped Byler since 2022, but while waiting for Season 5, I drifted away from it and had other interests. However, as soon as Season 5 came out, I rejoined the fandom. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, fandom I've ever been in, and with my other fandoms, there was always a shortage of decent fan content like art and fanfics, so suddenly rejoining a very large fandom with amazing content gave me just enough passion to finish my work. That was also when I read the famous Power Outage fanfiction, the first fanfiction I've read in almost 2 years. I used ChatGPT until I finished my book, but at that point I was exhausted and relieved to get it over with because I'd lost motivation very quickly, and for months working on it felt like a chore. But, and here's the interesting thing, when I stopped using AI, I immediately wanted to write again. I drafted another plot and made some characters, and by the time I started the first chapter, I immediately noticed how dull my writing had become. And it didn't take me long to figure out why. A few days later, I fully quit using AI. And the reason I'm using that terminology is because it can be an addiction. And for me, it definitely was. It took a lot of progress, but after a few weeks, I was fully comfortable with not using AI anymore for my writing. For context, I'm nearing 3 months clean in a few days. There was one issue though. I barely had any motivation left to finish the project I started. My characters felt dull, and my writing just felt straight up wrong, like it wasn't my own. Working on any project just felt impossible because it was tainted by the AI that I was heavily influenced by. So I took that as an opportunity and took a break from writing. Then, over a week later, Volume 2 of Stranger Things Season 5 came out. I saw the Byler community completely fall apart, and I felt inspired. Call me naive, but I still had hope and plenty of reasons for it. So I made a short 3-minute video with a handful of reasons that Byler was likely in the finale. And then it got 32,000 views. Also, in that week between Volume 2 and the finale, I read tons of fan fiction. I'm the kind of writer who is heavily influenced by whatever stuff they're reading, so my writing style is constantly changing. When I only use AI for assistance, it showed on my writing style. When I read multiple pieces of human-made literature that I didn't find boring, that also showed on my writing style. The more evidence I found, the more videos I made. And while I was writing the script for my finale prediction video, I noticed just how specific it was. And as much as I wanted it to happen, I put in the video that if the finale didn't go that way, I would write a fan fiction of it. I thought it would be a fun challenge, especially since I hadn't written in a few weeks and needed to refresh my writing. Then the finale came out, and it's safe to say that I was absolutely devastated and ended up bawling my eyes out. The episode came out on the evening of December 31st, and by 3 a.m. of January 1st, I already had half of Chapter 1 of Small Town Boy done. And since I was following the very loose outline that I gave myself, I decided to try to implement as many gates as possible, which was also a fun distraction. Since it was winter break, I had a lot of free time, and I think that was the most I've written in such a short time. And it was also the most fun I've had while writing. I wasn't worrying too much about plots or characters because I was working with lore and theories that had already been created. And I also found myself being less rigid in my writing style. I don't know how I can describe my writing style, but I do know that back when I used to proofread everything, my writing felt very rigid and lacked emotion because I was using AI and grammar websites instead of reading and gathering inspiration. But when I read fanfiction, that was very introspective but also characterized well, it influenced my own writing, which led to the blend that is my current writing style. I also loved the fan base and how many people love my fanfiction. Your feedback and support motivated me more than anything to keep writing it, even when it took days or even weeks to finish a chapter because of schedule conflicts. Here's some math for you. My main novel's finished draft is 50,000 words, and it took me 3 years to write. Small Town Boy took me 18 days and is 25,000 words. It took me 18 days to write half the word count of a 3-year project. As silly as it sounds, fanfiction is one of my favorite examples of creativity and determination. I've read so many fanfictions, and no matter if I like them or not, they still influence my writing style each time. It's like an art style. You start out with copying the artists or authors that you like, and then you start to merge your favorites together. And once you've added your own personal flair that appears over time, you have your own coherent style. Not to mention, fanfiction is much less stressful. When writing my novel, which by the way I will not be posting anywhere unless you guys start begging for it, I was so worried about what readers would think of the characters or the plot, and I started compromising my story in favor of a larger target audience. But with Small Town Boy, I knew who my target audience was right away, so I didn't have to worry about upsetting anyone on accident. Not to mention, the readers for my novel were people I knew in real life, while the readers of Small Town Boy were people I only knew online. So I was more prepared to shut down hate, and I was even more surprised when I didn't get much hate at all. Now I'm in the very early steps of making the second draft of my novel, and I know that I would not have this much of a drastic but beneficial change in my writing if I hadn't made a silly promise in a YouTube video that I would rewrite the entire Stranger Things finale. As someone who's been writing for a long time and has made plenty of mistakes, I feel like I have to end this video with some advice. So if you're a writer or want to be a writer, listen up because this can apply to both original work and fanfiction. First drafts are supposed to be bad. That was drilled into my skull over and over, and I still didn't believe it until a while after finishing my own first draft. And if it's your first writing project ever, then it's absolutely supposed to be bad. You're still getting your footing and figuring out what your writing style is, and the last thing you should do is shove your work into some grammar website so it can spit out nonsense about sentence length and prose that you don't understand. That's another piece of advice. Don't proofread your writing if it's unfinished. That's a recipe for disaster. It is guaranteed to have you stressing about small things for the rest of the time you work on your project. It certainly happened to me. If anything, the best way to improve your writing style is to reread your favorite books and, yes, fan fiction, and take inspiration from that. Most of the time, absorbing writing styles is completely subconscious. When you have a writer's brain, you're able to appreciate someone's writing and analyze it at the same time. And the next time you write, you find yourself mimicking them, using phrases and wording that you recognized and liked, and eventually you'll have a melting pot of your favorite authors boiled down into one writing style that's truly you. And finally, this one seems obvious, but I feel like saying it anyway. Do not ask AI to help you. Writing styles are, like I said, easily influenced. And if you're exposing yourself to AI slop that's trying to fix your writing is going to feel like AI slop. But all of this is my personal opinion, obviously. It's your writing, and you can do whatever you feel is best, and you don't have to listen to some teenage girl on the internet who writes Stranger Things fan fiction in her free time. That's the end of this video, and I really hope you enjoyed. I know people usually skip the end parts of these videos, but I do want to use this as an opportunity to ask you to please check out Small Town Boy on AO3 and Wattpad if you haven't yet, as well as my sequel fanfiction, Eyes Without a Face. I'll have the links commented down below, and any feedback is always appreciated. Thanks for watching.